5. Jesus heals a paralyzed man. Sometime after this, Jesus made his way to Jerusalem for the next Passover, as did many others. Near the sheep gate leading into the city was the pool of Bethesda. It was surrounded by 5 roof-covered porches with columns and arches. Here, many sick and handicapped people waited for the sudden and mysterious moving of the otherwise quiet water. People believed that periodically an angel came down from heaven and disturbed the water, and the first person in after the movement of the water would be healed. One of those who waited was a man who had been partially paralyzed for 38 years. As Jesus walked beside the columns of the porches around the pool, he saw this man lying on a mat. Jesus knew by looking at him that he had been sick for a long time. So he stopped and said to him, "Would you like to be healed?" The sick man barely looked up, but straining his voice to talk, said, "Sir, there is no one here to help me into the water at the right time. When I try to make it to the pool by myself, the others push and shove and always get in before I do. So, there's no use. I'm ready to give up." Jesus looked at him and said, "I'm not here to help you into the water. I'm here to tell you to stand up on your feet, then roll up your mat and go on home." The man didn't even question Jesus. He just willed to do what Jesus said. Put forth the effort to stand, and as he did, he found that he was healed. He reached down, rolled up his mat, and turned to thank Jesus. But Jesus had disappeared into the crowd, so the man tucked his mat under his arm and left for home. This was on the Sabbath day. When the Jewish leaders saw the man carrying his mat, they stopped him and said, "Don't you know that today is the Sabbath and that it's against the law to be carrying your bed?" The man answered, "The one who healed me told me to roll up my mat, pick it up, and go home." They said to him, "Who asked you to do that?" The man couldn't answer because he really didn't know who had healed him. He seemed to have vanished in the crowd. Later that day, Jesus saw the man in the temple, thanking God for healing him. He walked up to him and said, "It's good to see you well, but be careful. Don't return to your old lifestyle of sinning, or you might end up with something worse than what you had before." Then the man went to the Jewish leaders and told them that it was Jesus who had healed him and had told him to take up his mat and go home. Jesus equal with God. When they heard this report, the Jewish leaders began to zealously pursue Jesus, looking for a chance to arrest him and stone him as a Sabbath breaker. Every time they confronted him with a question of Sabbath keeping, he would say, "My Father does good on the Sabbath, and so do I." This answer only enraged the Jews. They were more determined than ever to execute him, not only as a Sabbath breaker, but also because he made himself equal with God by claiming that God was his Father.
On once